I think you should take us through the minimum tax to see the threshold they've put. So the minimum tax does not anticipate your ordinary business person. And when Mheshimiwa has mentioned that corruption is an aspect we need to be aware of, I'd like to inform us that a lot of tax that we lose is as a result of commercial transactions and planning, aggressive tax planning by corporates, particularly multinationals. So corruption is a part of it, but a huge part of it is commercial transactions that Africa and not just Kenya lose. So that it's an area that is worth the effort and worth those formulas. When you're looking at your multinationals, it's not your ordinary person. And I think that is why we also have the large taxpayers department at the Kenya Revenue Authority. That should be resourced with people that we pay, should be able to design those formulas, because you're up against auditors from other countries, accountants from other countries that want to avoid and give the least. And if we do not...
So let me take you through the threshold. Covered person means a resident person or a person with a permanent establishment in Kenya who is a member of a multinational group, and the group has a consolidated annual turnover of 750 million euros or more in the consolidated financial statements of the ultimate parent entity in at least 2 of the 4 years of income immediately preceding the tested year of income.
So there's a threshold that already locks out the smaller people. So I don't see it as a threat to the smaller taxpayers. And this is discourse that has been at the African region, following up closely from the Thabo Mbeki report that shows that Africa loses significant amount of taxes, not from corruption. Unfortunately, corruption is what we normally say, but corruption is dwarfed by aggressive tax planning and commercial transactions. That is why when the minimum tax was in court last year, it has still found its way in the 2024, because our country is aware on how much we are losing. So I would say that there's room for probably just looking at the formula, but it's something we need to be alive to. Sam and colleagues, if we don't do that, then it means the government comes for the hustlers and the smaller ones. So if we're already complaining around tax on bread, then it will get worse if you leave these ones out. And my contribution really on the finance bill is that I think we are looking at the bread, the motor vehicle, and with all this, we are losing, we might throw out very good provisions that need to be addressed. So one, for me, Mheshimiwa Ruto, when you look at that act, is to look at the issues around illicit financial flows. Look at the fact that we are continuing to give tax breaks to multinationals, to entities in the special economic zone, and then you're hurting the smaller taxpayers. Capital gain tax has been proposed to move from 15 to 5%. For an entity investing in Kenya, and it's under the guise of attracting investment. But we have been giving this, and unemployment is still high. So with this attracting and ceding our taxing rights, saying we will get employment, but unemployment is still high. Why not take the money from some of these multinationals and investors and invest in human development indicators, which from yesterday's report were a bit low. So that, for me, is a conversation that I would like the Finance Committee to look at it critically, look at provisions targeting multinational, special economic zones. How much are we losing out? Balance that. Of course, I wouldn't sit here and say we don't need to attract investors. We do need, but there's a delicate balancing act between the two. So that is an area that I think we are chasing other issues, but we don't need to lose sight of that. So just to balance that. And when you mentioned the eco-levy, I think that's also an area that seems new when introduced, but we need to be alive to climate change and issues around the environment. When we look at the recent floods, if you look at the floods within a city, I also sit on the board of Nairobi Revenue Authority. When you look at how much, forget about the many challenges we have in Nairobi County, but how much are we using on disposing our plastics and issues around that? It's a huge amount that would then be used in provision of essential medicines. So there is something we need to balance. Some sectors will eventually have to grow. And eventually taxation might be a tool to make us think creatively of moving towards environmental friendly substances. When you look at what we used to call it the polythene, we thought it was impossible to live without it, but the industries evolved. It was a setback, of course, within the first year, but if we don't do that as a country, we'll have to ask ourselves, do we want to use our money? Look at budgets. And I think, Sam, I would want to belabor this point, that the parliamentary committees and even the finance and planning should be able to ask counties and even national, how much do you use on garbage collection? Quantify that and tell us, would we want to say protect manufacturers? It's important, but how much money are we using in that area? I honestly think eco-levy has a space. Probably we should stagger how we introduce it, look at the percentages, and remove the aspects of double taxation. Listening in to people in the sector, they already mentioned there's a levy they pay to be able to cater for the environment. So if we bring the eco-levy, then we then need to abolish the other one. But the space of the eco-levy must be...
So when you say that, again, it's to make sure that organizations pay for the negative effects of their products, is there ring fencing of that levy itself so that it's going to issues of responding or taking action to protect the environment, to protect the people? Or it's just financing regular expenditure within the budget?
Some, I think that's the problem, and that's now where not to fight the eco-levy, but to ask what are the institutional frameworks and institutional integrity that we are putting in place. So in our submissions, one is that money should be ring-fenced. So you cannot collect money in the guise of environment and use it to pay allowances and per diems to state and public officers. That's a no. So we have to ring-fence. That is one. When you look at that sum, I would also look at it with the tobacco products. Look at the taxation of tobacco products, which we have said is a sin product. So we are happy now. As an advocate around that space, we've been advocating, and Mheshimiwa Ruto, last time there was no mention. When we appeared before your committee, there was no mention of taxation around tobacco and new generation products, velos and the like. And you look at the effect of that on NCD and health budgets. So you cannot speak as a country and say we are paying social health insurance and then you give a break to a product that contributes to the health burdens. Yeah. So, but then our question now is that tax has been there. We have a solatium fund for tobacco. We are happy at least with that. There's a fund, so kind of ring fencing that. So equally for the eco-levy, that should be the discussion. Okay. But there's also need some to remove some products from the eco-levy or bring distinction. My concern is the diapers. So diapers has been seen as, it contributes a lot to how the environment looks, but we need to have a conversation around gender norms and how do women access workplaces when we put a prohibitive levy on that. And also we need to distinguish adult diapers. Adult diapers are used mainly by special needs and a lot of children's home and parents that have special need. So if we go the way of adult with the diapers, we need to bring distinction between the marginalized groups so that it enables the women and families that have sick Kenyans to still be able to engage in economic activities. So it's a mixed, I think, product by product, and then ring fencing, as you're saying, and probably reduce the levies but not abolish. I think it's a good introduction when you're looking at waste management.